Hello everybody, E here. Welcome back to another TBR. I don't do these too often. I'm a mood reader. I tend to just focus on where, just basically my bookshelves take me. After I get done with one book, I'll move on to the next one. I do have projects that go along, but I usually have one book that I'm always reading that's kind of like an on-the-fly book. So I'll have like a Stephen King book going, or I'll have a Dean Koontz book going, or any number of books for my various projects, but I will also add in a mood read. And that's usually the book that I enjoy the most is the one for the mood read. But I said all that to say this. Every October, every spooky season, I do try and read a certain number of Halloween-themed books, or books that I feel are themed for the season. So I wanted to talk about that today. One of the main reasons is every single year I get asked the question, hey, what are you reading for Halloween? What are you reading for October? So here is that video. Jumping right into it, this was a gift sent to me by my friend Jessica over at Hopelessly Devoted Bibliophile. It's not a YouTube channel, it's just her blog. I will link to it down there in the description. But Witches, The Witches by Roald Dahl. I will be reading this one. This is one of my favorite movies. I've never actually read the book. I'm trying to get back into middle grade, and not really children's literature, but more middle grade, more stuff like this. I read The Phantom Tollbooth recently, and I absolutely loved it, so I'm going to try and branch back out to the kind of things that I grew up reading. So The Witches will be the first one that I read in October. As far as the rest of the books on this list, I'm just going to pick them up at will. I might start all of these books at the same time. I may only read one at a time. I doubt that's going to happen because I tend to get bored with only one book at a time. So next up, this is a tradition in my family, my immediate family, my wife and my kids. We read this book every single year. We'll hang around on the couch or whatever in the living room, and I will read this to everybody. It's The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. We don't watch the movie because the only versions of the movie I can find are the ones on YouTube, and those are, that's copyright infringement. You're not supposed to, watch those things. Just like audiobooks, unless the publisher or the author has uploaded it, you're stealing. They're not supposed to be up there. But if I ever find a decent copy for a decent price, I will be getting the movie because I love the movie as well. So that's The Halloween Tree. Next up, we have one that I've struggled with for many a year, but I'm going to finally try and get through it this year. I'm going to force myself through it. I figure if I can finish Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, I can finish this tiny book, and that's Dark Harvest by Norman Partridge. Every time I get into it, I just stop wanting to pick it up. I think the farthest I've made it is maybe, I think the first or second chapter or page break or whatever it is. Yeah, part 2 is the farthest I've ever made it, 60 pages in. I just lose interest. But this year, I'm going to force myself to read it, even if I have to read like 10 pages a day, because this Joker is only, 169 pages. So if I did it like that, it'd take me about 17 days. Next up, we have another season staple, a fallback. Anytime I'm not enjoying any one of these books, I'm going to pick this one up, and that's Dead Leaves by Keelan Patrick Burke. It's his collection. Every single year, it grows by one story, I think. So right now, it's at 9 tales from the witching season. But and Keelan does all of his covers. He also runs if you're an independent author, or even maybe in the publishing industry, Keelan does his own covers, and they're fantastic. He does covers for Cemetery Dance. He does loads of indie covers, and they're all amazing. He also does the newest Bentley Little covers for Cemetery Dance, and I think even the mass market versions. But yeah, so Dead Leaves, it has one of my favorite Halloween stories in it, The Toll. I really love that one. So if you haven't picked it up, I highly suggest. I don't know if he's doing another one this year or if he's going to be adding more in the future, but this one has the most yet at 9 stories, so I went ahead and bought a physical copy of it finally. But I've been reading it pretty much in ebook every single year. Next up is another one that I've tried multiple times. This one always felt overwritten to me. It's almost poetic, and I don't care too much for poetic prose or whatever. It's almost lyrical. It's not built that way, but even though it's written in prose, it feels lyrical, it feels poetic. But Stuart Onan's The Night Country, and I always want to call this The October Country because, you know, Ray Bradbury. I don't have that one, or else I'll probably be reading that one also. But this one, I'm going to, once again, I'm going to force myself to finish it. It's not that long. We're looking at 226, 27, 28, about 230 pages, roughly. This is probably the nicest copy I've found yet. I've owned 2 copies of it. One of them I found in a Goodwill that was all scratched up. This one I think I got online on eBay for relatively cheap. But yeah, so The Night Country by Stuart Onan. If you don't know, Stuart Onan wrote a book called Faithful about the year that the Red Sox finally won the World Series. He wrote that with Stephen King. He's a good friend of Stephen King's. I think they've written other things together also. I can't remember off the top of my head what those are. I don't necessarily care much for baseball, and I haven't been able to finish a Stuart Onan book yet, so hopefully this will be the first one on its own. I haven't even tried the collaborations with Stephen King. Finally, kind of thematically, I'm going with an adult witch book because I do like witches. It is not really a guilty pleasure of mine, but for someone who doesn't like tropes like vampires and werewolves and Frankenstein's monster and all that stuff, I tend to stray away from any kind of old school monster or old school lore or anything that's been used over and over and over again. But this one has really piqued my interest. The setting, the tone from what I've looked through it, skimmed some lines, and it'll also probably be the first one I finish from her, but that's The Witching Hour by Anne Rice. This is a whole chunk of book. So what I'm planning on doing with this one is 30 pages a night, maybe a little bit more there at the end, or maybe a little bit more as I go along when I read sections that I really am enjoying, hopefully. I will be quitting this if I don't like it, but yeah, so the book's 960 pages long, roughly. So I'm going to do 30 pages a day. Like I said, I'm going to have to do a little bit more than that to get done by the end of October, to get done by Halloween, but I hope to finish this on Halloween. Like I said, it's a huge book, and the font is not that big, so it's just brick after brick of text. Reminds me of like a Dan Simmons book. I know they're nothing like each other, but those are the books. If I blow through the shorter ones really quickly, I have some other stuff that I want to revisit, like the Al Sarantonio Orangefield series. It's got Halloween, something like that. I can't remember what they're all called, but I enjoyed them in my youth. I've enjoyed them within the past couple of years, so I will probably end up jumping on those. The only problem with those is I don't have physical copies. I do have the entire series on ebook. It was only 99 cents a few years ago, so that's usually how I read it. Anyways, so that's my October TBR, very early in September. I still have another week or so to go. But what are you guys reading for Halloween? Let me know down there in the comments below. If you already have a list up on YouTube or somewhere that I can go check it out, just leave a link down there in the doobly-doo, and I will get to it. But please take into consideration, these things sometimes go to spam. So I will check, during the week. I usually check one time a week, check to make sure that there's nothing in spam that's important. So if it doesn't show up right away, I'm not gatekeeping you. It's just because spam filters usually catch links either outside of YouTube or even to YouTube because they think that you're spamming people with your content. But until next time, I have been E, you have been you. This has been a Halloween TBR. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.